I finally surrendered to what I felt for my twin. The second Caleb's mouth crashed into mine, the world around us vanished. Only heat, only hunger, only the pulse hammering between us. The door slammed shut behind him, rattling in its frame, but I barely heard it over the blood roaring in my ears. His hands found my waist, urgent and rough, tugging me into him until every breath, every heartbeat, belonged to him. "We shouldn't," I gasped. But even as the words left my mouth, my fingers tangled in his hair, pulling him down harder. "Nora!" He growled against my lips, his voice low, wrecked. His mouth devoured mine, desperate, greedy, tasting of whiskey and years of suppressed longing. When his hands slid up my sides, under my sweater, skin against skin, I shuddered so hard my knees nearly gave out. Caleb caught me before I could fall, pinning me harder against the wall, his hips pressing into mine with a need that made my head spin. Everywhere he touched, I burned. Everywhere he kissed, I came undone. My body screamed at me to run, but my heart begged me to stay. The line we shouldn't have crossed had been obliterated long before this night. Tonight, we weren't just crossing it, we were burning it to the ground. 2 hours earlier, the winter festival in our sleepy little town wasn't supposed to be sexy. Hot cocoa, Christmas lights, bad cover bands, it was all innocent. But that night, nothing felt innocent anymore. Evan's party had taken over half the town square. A bonfire crackled near the fountain, teenagers draped in coats and scarves, laughter hanging in frosty clouds. Caleb and I arrived together like we always did, twins, best friends, inseparable. At least that's what everyone believed. He held open the passenger door for me, his fingers brushing mine longer than necessary when I climbed out. A small thing, a nothing thing, except it wasn't. Every nerve ending I had screamed from that tiny touch. "You're jumpy tonight," Caleb teased as he tugged my beanie lower over my ears. His knuckles grazed my cheek, and the stupid beanie suddenly felt like it was strangling me. "Cold?" I lied, stuffing my hands into my coat pockets. We made our way through the crowds, the air thick with wood smoke and roasting marshmallows. Caleb stayed close, a hand at the small of my back whenever someone jostled me. It was protective, brotherly, totally normal, except every time his palms splayed across my spine, my whole body tightened like a live wire. I tried to focus on the games, the music, anything else. But then Evan spotted us and waved us over, 2 steaming mugs in hand. "Finally!" he shouted over the music. "I was about to start without you 2 lovebirds." I froze. Caleb laughed like it was the funniest thing he'd ever heard, slinging an arm around my shoulders, pulling me into his side. I felt the heat of him, solid and real and terrifyingly vital. My heart thundered so loud I was sure Evan could hear it. "Twins," Caleb corrected, voice smooth, tragically unattached. I forced a laugh, taking a sip of the hot cider Evan thrust into my hand, hoping it would hide the tremble in my fingers. Maya showed up a few minutes later, cheeks pink from the cold, eyes sharp as ever. She hugged Evan, nodded at Caleb, and gave me a look I couldn't quite read. "Someone's tense," she said, smirking. "Long day," I muttered. "Long lifetime." We wandered the booths, played stupid carnival games, lost miserably at ring toss. The cold numbed my fingers, but inside, I was burning alive. Every time Caleb brushed against me, reaching for a prize, bumping hips in the crowd, I flinched like he'd set me on fire. It wasn't just me. I caught him looking too, longer than he should have, lower than he should have. When we stopped to watch the fireworks, Caleb stood behind me, his hands lightly on my hips, steadying me against the press of the crowd. I should have stepped away. I didn't. Instead, I leaned back, feeling the shape of him against my spine, the rhythm of his breathing in sync with mine. A burst of gold lit up the night sky. I didn't see it. All I saw was Caleb's hand sliding just slightly lower, not enough for anyone else to notice, but enough to shatter every defense I had left. 1 hour earlier, the Uber was too warm, or maybe it was just Caleb. I climbed into the back seat first, scooting to the far side, but Caleb slid in right after, his thigh pressing against mine before the door even clicked shut. The driver asked for our address. Caleb answered, his voice low, rougher than usual. I caught the way the driver's eyes flicked up at the rearview mirror. Maybe he could feel it too, the tension stretching so thick between us it was almost visible. I stared out the window, pretending to watch the snow tumble from the streetlights. But all I could think about was the heat where our legs touched, the way Caleb's jeans rasped against mine every time the car hit a bump. His hand rested on his knee, fingers drumming impatiently, but every so often, his pinky would brush my thigh, deliberate or accidental. I couldn't tell anymore. I clenched my fists inside my coat pockets, nails biting into my palms. Stay still. Don't move. Don't breathe too loud. We were fine. We were normal, except we weren't. Not tonight. A sharp jolt sent the car bouncing over a pothole, and my hand shot out instinctively, pressing flat against Caleb's chest. Solid. Warm. Too warm. Beneath my palm, his heart pounded like a trapped animal. My fingers splayed without thinking, feeling the steady thump, the flex of muscle. Our eyes locked. The air between us changed, shifted, thickened until it was a living thing, wrapping around our throats, squeezing. Caleb's gaze dropped to my lips. For a heartbeat, I thought he was going to lean in, right there in the back seat with the driver barely 5 feet away. I pulled my hand back like I'd touched a live wire, heart hammering in my throat. The rest of the ride passed in suffocating silence. When we finally pulled into the driveway, neither of us moved. The driver cleared his throat pointedly. Caleb paid, tipped absurdly high, and climbed out, offering me his hand without a word. I hesitated, one last chance to pull away, to pretend none of this was happening. Instead, I placed my hand in his. His fingers curled around mine, firm, certain, devastating. As we walked toward the house, snow crunching beneath our boots, Caleb leaned close, voice barely a whisper. Nightcap, just one word, just one excuse. I nodded, one step closer to burning everything down. 30 minutes earlier, inside the house, the silence wrapped around us like a thick, smothering blanket. Caleb tossed his keys onto the console table, the metallic clatter sounding way too loud. He moved toward the liquor cabinet without asking, pulling out a bottle of bourbon and 2 glasses. I hovered awkwardly by the couch, heart hammering in my chest. It was too quiet, too warm, too much. Nightcap? He asked, voice a little too casual, a little too rough. I nodded. He poured 2 generous shots, handing one to me, our fingers brushing again. Longer this time, deliberate. The TV flickered on, filling the room with low voices and soft music. Some movie we'd seen 100 times. But tonight, it felt different. Tonight, every laugh track, every sigh on the screen seemed to echo the tension crackling between us. We sat side by side on the couch, too close, not close enough. The bourbon burned down my throat, but it did nothing to cool the fever building inside me. Out of the corner of my eye, I watched Caleb. The way his jeans hugged his thighs when he shifted. The way his fingers flexed around his glass. The way he licked his lips, slow, almost absent-minded. But it set every nerve in my body on fire. You okay? He asked, voice low. I nodded too fast. He smirked like he knew exactly what was happening inside me. Maybe because it was happening to him too. When a particularly steamy scene played on the TV, I felt him tense beside me. His breathing changed shallower, heavier. Mine did too. Neither of us looked at the screen. Neither of us moved. It was unbearable. Finally, like gravity itself betrayed us, our shoulders brushed. I should have shifted away. Instead, I turned toward him. Caleb mirrored me, leaning in, his eyes dark, searching. For a heartbeat, we just hovered there, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from each other, to smell the faint hint of bourbon and snow still clinging to his jacket. His hand came up, almost hesitant, brushing a strand of hair behind my ear. I shivered under his touch. He froze, giving me a chance to pull away. I didn't, and then we shattered. Caleb's mouth found mine, desperate and sure, tasting of bourbon and years of longing. His hands gripped my hips, dragging me across the couch and into his lap. I gasped into his mouth, fingers clutching the front of his jacket like a lifeline. He pulled me closer, one hand sliding up my spine, the other tangling in my hair. The world tilted, spun, collapsed. And this time, there was no pretending we hadn't crossed the line. Present time. The sunlight stabbed through the curtains like an accusation. I woke up slowly, my head pounding, my mouth dry, my body aching in ways I didn't dare think about. For a few blissful seconds, I didn't remember where I was, who I was with. Then I felt it, the heavy weight of an arm draped over my waist, the steady rise and fall of a chest pressed against my back. Caleb. Panic knifed through me so sharply I almost gasped out loud. I squeezed my eyes shut, willing it to be a dream, a mistake, anything but what it was. But the soreness between my thighs, the ghost of his hands on my skin, the taste of him still lingering on my lips. There was no denying it. Last night had happened. All of it. I tried to slip away, moving inch by inch, but Caleb's arm tightened, pulling me closer. Running already? He murmured, voice rough with sleep. I froze. We need to talk, I whispered, not daring to look at him. His fingers traced lazy circles on my hip, casual and intimate in a way that made my heart ache. Talk, he repeated, like the word was foreign to him. I swallowed hard, gathering the shreds of my dignity. We can't let this happen again, I said. Silence stretched between us. Then Caleb sighed, rolling onto his back, scrubbing a hand over his face. Rules then, he said, voice flat. Rules? I echoed, feeling like my lungs were collapsing. He stared up at the ceiling, voice hollow as he listed them off. 1. No feelings. I flinched. 2. No getting caught. My throat tightened. And 3. He hesitated, then turned his head to look at me, eyes darker than I'd ever seen. No regrets. No regrets. I wanted to laugh, or cry, or both. Instead, I nodded. We shook on it, an absurd, silent agreement sealed in the ashes of what we used to be. Caleb leaned back, closing his eyes, and for a moment, he looked like a stranger. I lay there beside him, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of our choices settle like stones on my chest. No feelings. No getting caught. No regrets. We didn't stand a chance. Days after, first we were careful. Sideways glances across the kitchen table. A hand brushing against mine when no one was looking. A breathless kiss stolen in the dark corners of the house. We had rules. We tried to follow them, but rules were no match for what lived between us. The first time we slipped was a Thursday. Mom was at a book club meeting. Dad was working late. Caleb cornered me in the laundry room, the scent of detergent and warm cotton hanging in the air. You dropped this, he said, holding up a stray sock, but his eyes were locked on my mouth, not the sock. Before I could react, he pulled me in, lips crashing against mine, hands sliding under my shirt, finding bare skin like he was dying without it. I should have stopped him. I should have said no. Instead, I arched into his touch, clutching at his shoulders like I was drowning. Footsteps creaked on the stairs above us. We broke apart instantly, hearts hammering, gasping for air. Ellie, Mom's voice floated down. Caleb grabbed a laundry basket, shoving it into my arms. Just folding laundry, he shouted back, voice maddeningly steady. I pressed my forehead to his chest, barely biting back hysterical laughter. We were insane. Later, it got worse, more reckless. A lingering touch in the hallway, a kiss behind a half-closed door. A night when he snuck into my room and fell asleep wrapped around me like we were made to fit together. The second close call was even worse. Evan crashed at our house after a party, drunk and oblivious, sprawled on the living room couch. Upstairs, Caleb had me pinned against my bedroom wall, his mouth hot against my neck, his hands sliding under my pajama top. The floorboard creaked outside. We froze. Nora? Evan's voice slurred through the door. Caleb's grip on my hips tightened almost painfully. I swallowed my heartbeat and croaked out, "Just sleeping." Footsteps faded away. Caleb didn't move. Neither did I. For a long moment, we just clung to each other, trembling. "This is insane," I whispered into the dark, his forehead pressed against mine. "I know," he breathed. "God, I know." But neither of us stopped. Not that night. not the next. The rules were already ashes, and we were burning right along with them. Weeks later, we thought we were careful. Turns out we weren't careful enough. It was Maya who found out first. A photo, blurry, grainy, taken in the half-darkness of Evan's after-party. Me, pressed up against Caleb's chest, my hands buried in his hair, his mouth against my neck. There was no mistaking it. Maya texted me late one night, "We need to talk." Alone, I stared at the screen, heart pounding so loud I thought I might pass out. I showed Caleb. He paled, the blood draining from his face. "She's bluffing," he said. "She won't tell." He was wrong. By the next afternoon, our parents sat us down at the kitchen table, faces grim. Mom was crying. Dad looked like he wanted to break something. Between them, a phone lay on the table, the damning photo glowing brightly against the black screen. "Nora," Mom's voice cracked. "Is it true?" I opened my mouth, but Caleb spoke first. "No," he said smoothly, lying so easily it made my stomach churn. "Nora's been having a rough time lately. She's just clingy." My heart shattered a little more. I could have let him lie, could have nodded along, buried the truth deeper, but I didn't. I was so tired of hiding. "Yes," I said quietly. Mom gasped. Dad's fist slammed down on the table so hard the silverware jumped. "You will end this," he barked. "You'll transfer schools," Mom whispered, voice broken. "Across the country," Dad added. "You'll be gone by the end of the week." Caleb stared at them, stunned, like he hadn't believed it would come to this. I did. I always knew this wouldn't have a happy ending. That night, Caleb packed a duffel bag. He stood in my doorway, looking wrecked. "Come with me," he said, voice hoarse. "We can disappear. New names, new life, just you and me." For one heartbeat, I almost said yes. Almost. But I thought about Mom's face, about Dad's rage, about the crater we would leave behind if we ran. "We can't," I whispered. His face crumpled. He crossed the room in 2 steps, pulling me into his arms, burying his face in my neck. "We're going to burn anyway," he muttered. "Might as well burn together." I held him tighter, breathing him in, memorizing him, because tomorrow he would be gone, and nothing would ever be the same. The night before he left, I found Caleb in my room, sitting on the edge of my bed, head in his hands. He didn't hear me come in, or maybe he didn't care anymore. I crossed the room silently, kneeling in front of him. He lifted his head. His eyes were bloodshot, his face hollow. "Last chance," he said, voice so raw it barely sounded like him. "Say the word, and I'll stay." I wanted to. God, I wanted to, but I couldn't. We would destroy everything if we stayed. I shook my head, tears blurring my vision. A broken sound escaped his throat. He grabbed me then, pulling me into his lap, burying his face in my neck like he could somehow carve me into his bones. Our kisses were slow this time, desperate, savoring, memorizing. We made love like it was the end of the world, because for us it was. Afterward, we lay tangled together, barely breathing. His forehead rested against mine, his thumb tracing slow, aching circles on my hip. "Tell me you don't love me," he whispered. Couldn't. I didn't. Instead, I kissed him one last time. The next morning, Caleb was gone. A single note left on my pillow. "Don't forget me. Not even when it hurts." I read it once, twice, 3 times. Then I burned it, because remembering him, loving him, would hurt too much. Sometimes, the people we love the most are the ones we're never meant to have. If you've ever faced a choice between your heart and the world's expectations, you're not alone. Tell me, would you have stayed, or would you have let go? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join me for more stories that explore love, loss, and everything in between. Thank you for listening. Until next time.